Lindsay, this is Mrs. Meckins, and we've started a new lesson series. We're now working on tracking a character, collecting all the details we can about a single character across the entire text. And we do this because authors develop characters. They want us to really get to know their characters, find out who they really are. And so after reading, after you've already summarized a text, you understood it, you got the gist, then often you can go back and really look at how an author described and developed a character. Now, we talked in the last lesson that there are four different ways, four different types of details that authors provide when developing a character. And the first one isn't super helpful in getting to know a character. Remember, that was what does the character look like? Okay, and we didn't really do a whole lot with this because they can look very different, but act the same. 3 or 4 characters can look different, but act very much the same, or they can look very much the same and act very differently. So although authors give us these details, this isn't really going to help us get to know the character. So I didn't even put it on our chart, okay? But the one I did from the last lesson was studying what a character does, the actions that they take, the decisions and choices, even their reactions to situations or other characters. All of this gives us insight into a character. Now, when we're collecting the information about what a character does, you have to keep in mind that all stories aren't like filled with tons of action. Sometimes a character never leaves the room, the same setting for the whole story. And they don't climb on anything, they don't fall off anything, they don't even make anything. They're just in the room in the story, the whole story happens. My point is this, that sometimes when you're collecting details, if you're only looking at what a character does, you might not get a lot of information. Remember American Pepper, the legend from the last lesson, when I was using the character of Savni and collecting all the things that she does in the story? Well, look at your screen because, gosh, she didn't do a whole lot. She looked surprised. She opened a letter in a package. She stroked her daughter's hair, and she invited a doctor. I don't actually know a lot about Savni based on what she did. Some characters have a lot of action, and you can learn a lot about the character, but some characters don't do much. And so now you have to rely on another type of detail that authors sprinkle across the text, and you want to notice and take note of, okay? And so this third one, remember, this is the third kind of detail, but it's the second one I'm going to put on the chart that will really help us get to know a character is, what does the character say? How does the character speak? What do they talk about? What they talk about tells you a lot about what they're interested in, what they think, what they're motivated by, where their mind is. What they tell you in terms of quoted dialogue is not just what the character said, but if you look outside those quotation marks, you also can find out a lot about how the character said it. Did it just give the character's name and the word said, or did it say said sarcastically? Because that tells you a little bit about the character. Did it say that he grunted it? So not just that he spoke it, but he spoke it in a grunt. Okay, that tells you a little bit more. Remember, our whole goal when we track characters is to get to know characters better on the inside, who they really are. And why are we doing this? Why would a reader ever want to know more about a character beyond just what he did? Because characters change. Characters grow. Characters learn. And in that growth and that maturity and that learning a character does, in the change that they make, that's crucial to figure out the author's theme, the message, right? And you know, language arts teachers love talking about themes. So you know I'm going to want to talk about it. And I'm telling you, how do you know what the theme is? Oh, it's going to live in the character, what the character does, in what the character says. So we've got to really look at how authors develop these characters. every detail they give us is not by accident. They are not just trying to fill a word quota and they just tell you a little more. Oh, no, 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 no. If the character did this and how they did it, said this and how they said it, oh, no, no, no. That's all so that the reader better understands the character and can get to the message, the theme. All right. So when I talk about what a character says, let's also be conscious that you want to look for what a character doesn't say, or how a character says it in terms of hesitant, broken, stilted, fragmented, okay? You want to look at when a character speaks and tries to change the subject. What are they avoiding talking about? See, all of that tells you a little more about this character. So it's not just literally writing down every word that they speak. It's taking note of, yeah, and what does that tell you? What do you now know about this character? Because every detail the author gives you, totally on purpose. Nothing is by accident. All right, now before we actually go back to American Pepper and look at Sobney and what she said among all of her actions, let me point out one other thing, and that is that it doesn't have to actually be a reading voice detail. Remember, this is green because it's a reading voice detail, right? Your reading voice will come across the details that characters speak. Okay, that's why it's green. Well, sometimes you'll find out what the character said, but it's not because it was in quotation marks. It was narrated. The author said that so-and-so explained this idea. And so it's narrated. So you find out what they said, but not literally word by word. Okay, you still want to take note of those things. So what did they talk about? What did they explain? What did they discuss? What did they argue about? You want to take note of that because that counts as what the character said. All right, but it's just not word for word, but it's still insight and it's worth noting. Okay, so I'm adding this up because readers want to track what characters do and what characters say. All right, I'm going to jump to our American Pepper passage, and I want you to watch me do this. So now you're going to see me juggle what Sobney does and says. I'm going to juggle both of those things. Now, I could go back to our timeline tracker and just add what she says in between all the things she does. But I want you to remember, you can take notes using this document, okay, or a sheet of paper and a timeline. But remember, you can also annotate. And sometimes when you're doing this kind of work, this kind of thinking, it's just easier to annotate. Do you remember what annotation was? That's when you write inside the text, in the margins, you mark up the text. All right, that's annotation. Note taking is what we did in the last lesson when we lifted details out and wrote them on another piece of paper. Okay, well, as we're annotating, remember what annotation is. I'm not just going to underline or circle or mark something. I also have to put my thought, my note in the margin. Remember, note is in the middle of annotation. Okay, and so what am I going to note? Well, as I'm reading and I come across a detail that Sobney does or says, my thinking voice is going to tell me, ooh, that's one of those things she said. Ooh, that's something she did. And so what I'm going to just put in the margin after I mark the keyword or phrase is simply do or say. Okay, because all of this is going to help me better understand the character as I collect and track this information. Okay, so we didn't only call this annotation previously, we called it highlighting. Remember that? So I can't just mark the text. I have to put a thought in the margin. Why am I highlighting this part of the text? All right, so you're going to see Mrs. Smeckens do that, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to use certain marks as I do it. I'll do it here on my clipboard, okay, but I'm going to use certain marks. And when I'm first reading through, and if my thinking voice says, ooh, 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 that's something Sobney did, then I'm actually going to draw a box around those words or phrases. And in the margin, I'm just going to write do, all right, for action, all right? But I also want to have another marking or coding, and this isn't unusual that readers would do this, have a different way to mark a different kind of detail. And so when I want to mark what Sobney actually says, dialogue spoken or narrated, then I'm just going to underline those keywords or phrases. And again, I say keywords or phrases, all right? We don't paint the text. I'm not going to underline everything, just keywords to get the gist of what she was saying there, okay? And in the margin, I'll write say. All right, so you're going to see Mrs. Smeckens do this. I will pull up American Pepper on your screen. You can kind of follow along. And I'm going to mark what she does and says in the first chunk, and then I'm going to ask you to help me to juggle marking what she does and says in the second chunk. All right, so you look at the screen, be thinking, what would you be marking? And then we'll do it together. Okay, here we go. Mummy, mummy, shouted little Myrna, racing from the front door through to the kitchen. There's a parcel. The postman's brought a parcel. Her mother, Savni, looked at her in surprise. She had no idea who could have sent them a parcel. Okay, my thinking voice is saying she looked at her. That's an action. So I'm going to actually put a box around looked at her in surprise. All right, put a box around it. And the margins, I'm going to say that's a do. That's something she did. All right, action. Okay, she had no idea who could have sent him a parcel. Maybe it was a mistake. She hurried to the door to find out. Ooh, hurried to the door. That's an action. So hurried to door. Again, I'm just boxing hurried to door. And it's probably a little closer to mark it here. So I'm going to put do here. Okay. Sure enough, postman was there holding a parcel. From America, madame, he said. See, American stamps. It was true. In the top right corner of the brown paper parcel, there were 3 strange-looking stamps showing a man's head. The package was addressed to Savni, in big, clear black letters. Well, I suppose it must be from Great Aunt Posny, said Savni to herself. Okay, wait a minute. It's in dialogue. It's in quote marks. So she spoke it, but she said it to herself. You ever done that? Out loud, but you're talking to yourself. Oh, why did I do that? And I'm not really talking to anybody, but it came out of my mouth. All right, well, she's talking to herself, but she's talking. And so we need to mark that. And so, well, I suppose it must have come from Great Aunt Posny. Okay, I'm just gonna underline. Remember when I do what she says, I don't use a box. That's action. I choose to underline just keywords. Great Aunt Posny. Okay, and then I'm just gonna write say. Okay, in the margin. My thinking voice is saying, hey, that was spoken. She's realizing, oh, it's Great Aunt Posny. Then he's whistling and the postman leaves. Although it must be 20 years since we've heard anything from her. This is Savni. I thought she would have been dead by now. Okay, well, she spoke, so I definitely want to mark something. And again, I just want to capture the sentiment, some key words. It's been 20 years since we heard from her. I'm going to underline 20 years since, okay? And thought she'd been dead. Dead by now. And again, that's all says. Now I can mark that's a says and that says, or I can just kind of bracket the whole thing. Okay, all of that was spoken. All right, let's keep going. I'll keep going and then you're going to jump in. Savni's husband, Jornis, and her son, Aranis, were just coming in from the garden where Myrna had to run to them about the parcel. Well, open it up, said Aranis impatiently. Let's see what's inside. Okay, remember, none of that's Savni, so I don't mark it. I'm only tracking Savni's actions and spoken words. Okay, help me with this next chunk, all right? You read through and I'll pause and you tell me what should I be boxing because she did it and what should I be underlining because she said it. All right, here we go. Setting the parcel down in the middle of the table, Savni carefully began to tear open the paper. Inside, there was a large silver container with a hinged lid, which was taped shut. There was also a letter. All right, so have we gotten any details? First paragraph, what are you thinking? Yes, and we did this in the previous lesson. These are things she did. What did she do? Good. She set down the parcel. I'm going to box it because it's action. Okay, I'm going to write do. All right, and she tore it open. That also was action, so I'm writing do. All right, anything else there? She say anything? Nope. Okay, let's keep going. What is it? What is it? Is it a present? Myrna asked impatiently. Okay, wait a minute. That's quote. Should we mark that? But somebody said it, but not Savni. So only word Savni says do we mark. All right, let's keep going. I have no idea, said Savni in confusion. I think it must be from Great Aunt Posny. She went to America almost 30. Okay, wait, who's talking? Savni. Okay, so we should mark this, right? And we're not going to underline all of that paragraph. So what are some keywords we should underline? Let's start at the beginning of that paragraph. I have no idea. Yeah, I think that's, she has no idea what is inside this. So I'm going to underline that. I'm going to mark says. We got a lot of says coming out in this paragraph, I think. But look, how did she say it? Right after that, she was confused. Yeah, I would mark that. That's also part of confusion, or part of how she said it, or what she said and how she said it. Mark both. Okay, she thinks it's from Great Aunt Posney. Again, I'm not marking it. We already marked that. Went to America 30 years ago. Haven't heard from her in 20 years. Perhaps the letter will tell us. Would you mark any of that? Okay, perhaps the letter. Okay. She opened the folded page cautiously, then looked up in dismay. Do you have actions or spoken words? Actions. What are they? She opened the letter, okay, and looked up. And so I'm putting a box around those. And how do I mark those in the margin? Do, because it's an action. Good. Okay. Well, this is no help, she said in annoyance. What are we marking? This is no help. Annoyance. So we're learning a little more about her. She's frustrated, easily frustrated. She's very confused. And now she's annoyed. All right. And I'm going to mark that with says. Okay. It's written in English. How does she expect us to read English? We're poor. We have no education. Maybe Posney's forgotten her native language after 30 years in America. Okay. Come on. Some of that is good. We're learning more about Savni. And you probably missed some of this the first time you read it. Okay. So what are we realizing about Savni? Okay, she does not read English. Okay, poor, no education. All right, and she's starting to wonder if maybe she forgot, great aunt forgot her native language. Okay, so that's all what she says. So we want to mark that. All right. Well, open the pot anyway, and that, of course, is her husband. All right, so what we're learning to do in this lesson is not just track what a character does, but also what a character says. Whoa. We're not done. We're not done. Because I want to introduce you to the third type. The third type I want to put on the chart, but the fourth way authors actually develop characters. They tell you what a character looks like. Yeah, that's mildly helpful. They tell you how a character acts. They tell you what a character says. And they tell you what a character thinks. This, although the most subtle of details and doesn't come out until later in the story. You know, authors usually lead with action and they lead with physical description, but this idea of what they think, it kind of is subtly, subliminally sprinkled into the text. Oh yeah, this is some of the most powerful details. Because a character can say anything, doesn't mean they believe it. They can lie. Yeah! These are the most private thoughts of a character. This gives you the most insight into a character, what they really think, what they really feel, what they believe in their heart of hearts. As I get ready to add this to the anchor chart, let's make sure we know what I mean by what a character thinks. And sometimes the author will just say, and she thought, blah, 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 blah. But other times they'll disguise it with some synonyms. And she pondered, and she wondered, and she daydreamed. Okay, these are all thoughts. She imagined. These are thoughts. You want to mark these. These are giving you insight into the character. Sometimes it's more like self-talk, like a pep talk to yourself, okay? And so it could be pep talks, self-talks. It could be wonderings, ponderings. It could be, I really want, or she really wished for, she hoped he would, da-da-da-da-da. And so all of those wishes and wants, dreams and hopes, those are all thoughts. Mark them. You're getting a lot of good information about the character right now. And anytime you find out what they're feeling, thinking and feeling go together. Mark it. All right. And we're going to mark this. We're going to go back to American Pepper and we're going to look back at Savni. And we're going to mark this time with a third kind of trigger or marking on the page. So if we mark actions with a box and what they speak or say with a straight line, then under or a squiggle line underneath what they think. And again, highlight it. You have to write the word think in the margin, or feel. You can write feel if that makes more sense depending on whatever the detail is. Okay, so I'm going to go back to American Pepper here. And And so let me do one or two, and then I'll have you do one or two of these with me. Okay, I'm going to go back to this second paragraph, just to the second paragraph. All right, her mother, Savni, looked at her surprisingly. She had no idea who could have sent them this parcel. Maybe it was a mistake right there. She's thinking, I have no idea who would have sent this. Mark it. I'm going to squiggle line, no idea. Squiggle line, and I just write think. She's even thinking it's a mistake. Like, who's sending us a package? We shouldn't be getting a package. I didn't expect a package. This is a mistake. All of those thoughts, she never voiced them, but she thought them. So mark it with a squiggle line. It's a thought. Okay. Now, if I jump down to the postman says, it's from America, Madam C. And she saw her name on the package, big black letters. And then at the beginning of that fourth paragraph, it says it was true. Okay. Now she didn't speak that. It's no quotes. She's realizing it's true. She's thinking it's true. Mark it. Squiggle line, think. Okay, help me with another one. Let's jump down to let's go over to this is no help. Where was that? The English here. Okay, you guys, don't get caught up in marking things with, is it a said or is it a thought? Is it a do or is it a thought? Don't get caught up in that. It's not that big of a deal. Okay, my point is this. If we go back to when she opened up the letter and realized it was in English, and she said, well, this is no help. It's written in English. I know she's saying all of those things, but she's also thinking them. You know how some people speak even before they finish the thought, and that sometimes gets them in trouble, but they don't have the thought and then say something. Sometimes the thinking and the speaking happen simultaneously. Sometimes the action and the thinking happen simultaneously. Whatever, that's fine. She's thinking, hey, we're poor. Hey, we're uneducated. What you writing it in English for? Clearly that's not their native language. And so I could mark those as thoughts as well. She's thinking we're poor. She's thinking we have no education. She's thinking this is no help. Okay, so don't split hairs. If you thought that was more of a thought or a feeling, mark it. Fine, just notice it. That's the important thing. Just notice it. Okay, so what we're learning in this lesson are the other ways authors develop characters. Authors give us lots of details across a whole text. They'll tell us what a character does, but subtly, more subliminally, but sometimes way more valuable. They tell you what a character says and what a character thinks or feels. And you got to notice all of these, because all of these are going to help us better understand the character, who the character really is on the inside. This is going to get us to theme. This is going to get us to character traits, really understanding what was the author trying to tell us through this story, okay? And we'll get to those thoughts. Let's just better collect details and recognize details within our characters. All right, so if you were in Mrs. Smecken's class, here's what I would ask you to do. I'm going to have you go back to the carpet fitter, okay? And so you remember the carpet fitter, and I have I'm going to give it to you now on 2 pages, okay? I'm going to give it to you because I've added some space between the lines. I've made the margins a little wider, because if you can print this out, I would like you to try annotation, highlighting. I would like you to do what I did, and that is where you go through and you box and you mark, and so box the actions, underline the spoken words, and squiggle line any thoughts or feelings, okay? But if you can't print this out, if you can't do it digitally, if you can't annotate, then you can absolutely note take, and I still want you to read the whole carpet fitter, and I want you to mark what Eddie does, says, and thinks. So you can either use this form or a piece of paper and track what he does, says, and thinks. Just make sure you mark. This is a do, this is a say, this is a think. Or you can do it as annotation. If you were in Mrs. Smecken's class, I would ask you to do that for Eddie in the carpet fitter. But your teacher might have a better idea.